In the towering glass fortress of tech giant industries, Rose Williams moved like a shadow through empty corridors at midnight while executives slept in their penthouses. She studied their habits, their papers, their lives for 15 years. Her invisibility became her superpower, armed with a master's in business earned in stolen moments between scrubbing floors and polishing windows. She absorbed every detail of the corporate world that thought she was just another cleaning lady. The night shift had become her sanctuary, a quiet realm where she ruled over empty cubicles and vacant corner offices with nothing but the hum of vacuum cleaners and the scent of lemon fresh cleaner to keep her company. Rose had started at Tech Giant back when it was just 3 floors in a shabby office building, but now she watched over 60 floors of prime Manhattan real estate every night. She saw the evidence of success in the imported marble floors and designer furniture that she lovingly maintained while pursuing her own dreams in the darkness. The cleaning cart she pushed had become her mobile desk, countless textbooks hidden beneath the supplies as she studied during her breaks, memorizing financial formulas while others slept. The other cleaning staff called her crazy when she started investing every spare penny into company stock. But Rose saw what they didn't: the secret meetings through glass walls, the celebrations after big deals, the subtle signs of a company about to explode into the stratosphere. She noticed how young Marcus Sterling had transformed from an ambitious department head into a ruthless CEO, watching his meteoric rise from the shadows as she earned her degree one night class at a time. On this particular night, Rose methodically worked her way through the executive floor, her practiced hands moving swiftly over desks and surfaces, while her sharp mind cataloged the changes she noticed in the past week. 3 new security cameras had appeared in the West Corridor. Executive assistants were working later than usual, and the shredding company had made 4 unexpected visits. She knew every detail mattered in the corporate world. Even the smallest change could signal something bigger brewing beneath the surface. The cleaning cart squeaked softly as she pushed it past the CEO's corner office. Sterling had left his desk in disarray, again files scattered across the polished mahogany surface, coffee cups, leaving rings on important documents. Rose shook her head at the carelessness of privilege as she carefully organized the chaos, her eyes scanning documents with the expertise of her business training, catching glimpses of merger talks, acquisition plans, and something else, something that made her pause in her routine. Behind her, the city lights twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the empty office. Rose had learned long ago that true power lay not in corner offices or executive titles, but in knowledge and patience. She had watched countless ambitious executives come and go, their careers blazing bright before burning out, but she remained constant, as unchanging as the stars above Manhattan, studying, learning, and waiting. Her coworkers never understood why she stayed in this job after earning her degree, but Rose knew something they didn't. Sometimes the best view of a system came from the bottom up. She had watched Sterling build his empire from the ground floor, literally, and now she saw things others missed: the subtle shifts in power, the quiet conversations, the nervous energy that rippled through the office like waves in a still pond. Tonight felt different, though. Something electric hung in the air as Rose moved through her familiar routine. The weight of her business degree and years of observation pressed against her like a secret weapon waiting to be unleashed. She knew every security guard's rotation, every camera's blind spot, every late-night cleaning staff gossip that filtered through the building, her unofficial network of invisible workers who saw everything and said nothing. The night spread out before her like a blank canvas as Rose continued her rounds, pushing her cart past rows of empty desks, each step bringing her closer to a destiny she hadn't yet recognized. But somewhere in the quiet halls of Tech Giant Industries, a storm was brewing, and Rose Williams, the silent observer, the shadow in the night, the cleaning lady with a master's degree, was about to become its epicenter. The paper that changed everything fluttered from Marcus Sterling's desk one stormy night as Rose emptied his trash. Her hands froze as years of financial training kicked in, spotting patterns that made her blood run cold. Millions of dollars vanishing into offshore accounts, fake charities, shell companies. Suddenly, 15 years of watching from the shadows crystallized into a moment of clarity that would shake Tech Giant to its foundation. Thunder rolled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows as Rose stood motionless in the darkened office, her heart pounding against her ribs as she scanned the document again and again, making sure her mind wasn't playing tricks on her. The numbers danced before her eyes, telling a story that went beyond simple corporate greed. She recognized the telltale signs of money laundering, having studied financial fraud cases during her master's program, the careful movement of funds through a maze of shell companies, each transaction just small enough to avoid regulatory scrutiny, but together forming a river of stolen wealth that flowed straight into Sterling's private accounts. Rose pulled her phone from her cleaning cart with trembling fingers, photographing each page with the precision of a forensic accountant, her mind already cataloging the evidence and connecting it to other suspicious documents she'd glimpsed over the years: the late-night meetings with unknown investors, the sudden firing of the previous CFO who had asked too many questions, the mysterious consultancy fees that seemed to multiply with each passing quarter. Lightning illuminated the Manhattan skyline, casting strange shadows across the luxurious office as Rose discovered more papers hidden beneath expense reports and mundane memos, her trained eye-catching discrepancies that others had missed or chosen to ignore, fake invoices from companies that didn't exist, charitable donations that circled back through private accounts, board meeting minutes carefully edited to conceal the truth that lay beneath the surface. The storm outside matched the turbulence in Rose's mind as she realized the full scope of what she had uncovered. Sterling hadn't just been stealing, he had built an entire shadow financial system within tech giant, using the company's explosive growth and complex international operations as cover for his schemes. The evidence suggested he had embezzled nearly $500 million over the past decade, right under everyone's noses. Her cleaning cart stood forgotten by the door as Rose moved silently through the office, gathering more documents, her years of invisible presence allowing her to know exactly where to look, which drawers might hold crucial evidence, which cabinets contained the real records behind the official reports. She had watched Sterling hide papers in these same spots countless times, never imagining she understood the significance of what she was seeing. A security guard passed by the office door, making his routine rounds. Rose quickly resumed her cleaning routine, muscle memory taking over as she pretended to dust Sterling's desk, her mind racing with the implications of her discovery. She thought about the maintenance staff who had been denied raises, the pension fund that had been supposedly underperforming, the workers who lost their jobs in cost-cutting measures, while Sterling siphoned away millions. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders, as heavy as the storm clouds outside. Rose knew she couldn't simply report this to the board. Sterling had too many allies in high places, people who'd benefited from his schemes or been paid to look the other way. She would need an airtight case, evidence so compelling that even his army of lawyers couldn't dismiss it. She would need to become something more than just the invisible cleaning lady. She would need to become the weapon that would bring down an empire. As the storm raged on, Rose carefully returned everything to its exact position. Years of cleaning had taught her the importance of leaving no trace. She pushed her cart toward the door, pausing only to straighten a photo on Sterling's desk, an image of him shaking hands with the mayor at a charity gala. The irony almost made her smile, knowing now where those charitable donations had really gone. Tomorrow, she would begin building her case, but tonight she had more offices to clean, more evidence to gather, more pieces to add to the puzzle that would eventually shatter the glittering facade of tech giant industries. Rose spent 3 sleepless months gathering evidence, building her case like a master strategist. She photographed documents, traced money trails, and recorded conversations, hiding her phone in her cleaning cart while corrupt executives spoke freely around the woman they thought couldn't understand their golden world. Her finger trembled over the board meeting request button, but her Harvard Business School training steadied her resolve. Each night became a careful dance of deception as she maintained her role as the invisible cleaning lady, while secretly orchestrating what would become the biggest corporate takedown in tech giant's history. Her tiny apartment transformed into an investigation headquarters, walls covered with sticky notes and diagrams tracking the flow of stolen millions through a complex web of international accounts. She worked through her lunch breaks, cross-referencing dates and transactions, her business degree proving more valuable with each discovery. The cleaning cart now held more than just supplies, carefully concealed compartments hiding a high-resolution camera, voice recorder, and backup drives. Rose watched Sterling grow more paranoid with each passing week, his late-night office tantrums leading more messes for her to clean. Quietly collecting the crumpled papers, he thoughtlessly tossed away each one, adding another piece to her growing puzzle. Other executives started whispering in corners, their voices hushed as they discussed missing funds and irregularities in the books. But none of them suspected the true investigator wore a cleaning uniform and carried a mop. The nights grew longer as Rose meticulously built her case, creating backup copies of every document, storing them in secure locations across the city. She knew Sterling had eyes everywhere, but she had something he didn't: 15 years of knowing every hiding spot, every security cameras, blind spot, every maintenance tunnel that wound through the building like secret passages in an ancient castle. Her years of invisibility became her greatest weapon. During her dinner breaks, Rose made anonymous calls to former employees who had been silenced by Sterling's legal team, her gentle questioning and understanding tone drawing out confessions and promises to testify. She recorded everything, building a fortress of evidence that would be impossible to ignore or dismiss, her hand steadying with each passing day as she prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. The cleaning staff became her unwitting allies, sharing gossip about shredded documents, late-night meetings, and suspicious visitors. Rose cataloged every detail, knowing that in the world of corporate crime, even the smallest thread could unravel an empire. She watched as Sterling hired more security, installed new cameras, changed locks. But he never thought to suspect the cleaning lady, who had been there all along, watching, learning, waiting. On her rare days off, Rose met secretly with a trusted lawyer in dingy coffee shops far from tech giant towers, reviewing her evidence and planning their strategy. The lawyer was amazed at the thoroughness of her investigation, a precise documentation that surpassed what most professional investigators could gather. Rose had learned from years of watching corporate lawyers protect the guilty. She would leave no loose ends, no room for doubt. The weight of her secret began to wear on her. Sleepless nights spent reviewing financial statements and cross-referencing dates took their toll. But Rose knew she couldn't rush this. Every move had to be perfect, like a chess master setting up an intricate endgame. She watched Sterling promote his allies to key positions, thinking he was protecting himself, never realizing he was actually concentrating all the corruption in one easily provable conspiracy. Finally, after 3 months of gathering evidence, double-checking sources, and preparing her presentation, Rose sat in her small apartment staring at the board meeting request form on her laptop screen. Years of being overlooked, ignored, and underestimated had led to this moment. Her finger hovered over the send button as memories of every dismissed greeting, every condescending smile, every time she had been treated as part of the furniture flashed through her mind. Tomorrow, she would step out of the shadows, but tonight she had one more round of cleaning to do, one final chance to ensure every piece was in place for the corporate explosion that would rock Wall Street to its foundations. Jaws dropped and coffee cups clattered as Rose strode into the boardroom, trading her cleaning uniform for a tailored suit. Her presentation flickered to life on the screen, showing damning evidence that made several board members loosen their silk ties in discomfort. Sterling sat at the head of the table, his smirk dying as Rose unveiled 15 years of his carefully hidden crimes with the precision of a prosecutor. The morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows illuminated the stunned faces of tech giants' most powerful executives as they realized their cleaning lady was about to destroy everything they had built. Marcus Sterling tried to speak, but Rose held up one perfectly manicured hand, the same hand that had scrubbed his office floor countless times, silencing him with a confidence born from knowing she held all the cards. The boardroom air grew thick with tension as she methodically displayed financial records, transaction histories, and surveillance footage, her voice steady and professional as she outlined the largest fraud in the company's history. Board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs as they recognized their own signatures on documents that now revealed a criminal enterprise. The presentation screen flickered through slide after slide of evidence, each one landing like a precision strike. Rose had practiced this moment 1,000 times in her tiny apartment, but nothing had prepared her for the raw emotion of standing here before the people who had walked past her for 15 years without a second glance. Now they couldn't look away as she revealed offshore accounts, shell companies, and falsified charity donations, their faces growing paler with each revelation. Sterling attempted to interrupt again, his face reddening as he sputtered about security clearances and confidentiality agreements, but Rose calmly produced her stockholder documentation showing years of careful investment in company shares. The board chairman nearly choked on his premium roast coffee when he saw the percentage of tech giant stock she had quietly accumulated while pushing her cleaning cart through their corridors. She owned enough shares to demand this audience, and they were legally bound to listen. The evidence mounted like an unstoppable tide. Surveillance footage showed Sterling shredding documents in the dead of night, email chains revealed coordinated cover-ups, wire transfers traced millions flowing into private accounts. Rose had documented it all, her years of business education, combining with her unique position as the invisible observer to create an airtight case. The young paralegal, frantically taking notes in the corner, could barely keep up as she systematically dismantled 15 years of corporate corruption. Board members who had entered the room looking annoyed at having their morning interrupted by a cleaning lady now sat frozen in their chairs as Rose played audio recordings of late-night conversations, executives planning their schemes, never noticing the cleaning cart in the corner with its hidden microphone. She had them all. Sterling, his conspirators, the whole network of corruption laid bare in high-definition detail on the boardroom screen. Some began loosening their ties, others gulped water nervously. One woman near the end of the table seemed to be quietly calculating how quickly she could contact her lawyer. When Rose finally revealed the total amount stolen from the company, several gasps echoed through the room. $500 million, funneled away through a complex web of fraud that she had uncovered piece by patient piece. Sterling leaped to his feet, shouting about class warfare and disgruntled employees, but his words died in his throat. As Rose calmly projected his personal bank records onto the screen, account numbers matching perfectly with the trails of stolen funds she had traced, the board chairman cleared his throat, finally finding his voice to ask how a cleaning lady had managed to compile such a comprehensive investigation. Rose allowed herself a small smile as she clicked to her final slide, displaying her Harvard Business School diploma, her perfect GPA, and her specialized certification in forensic accounting earned through years of night classes. While she mopped these very floors, the silence in the boardroom was absolute, broken only by the sound of Sterling calling frantically for his lawyer. Sterling unleashed his army of lawyers, but Rose had anticipated every move like a grandmaster. She produced whistleblower testimonies from other cleaning staff who had witnessed late-night document shredding sessions, security camera footage of suspicious meetings, and most devastating, a recording of Sterling himself bragging about fooling the SEC. The boardroom became a battlefield where degrees and titles meant nothing against cold hard evidence. The next 48 hours unleashed a corporate war that would reshape tech giant forever. Sterling's legal team descended on the tech giant tower like expensive suits of armor, each lawyer carrying briefcases worth more than Rose's yearly salary, but she stood unmoved as they attempted to discredit her, their arguments falling apart against the fortress of evidence she had built. One particularly aggressive attorney suggested she had obtained the evidence illegally, only to be silenced when Rose produced detailed logs of her shareholder rights and corporate bylaws that legally entitled her to every document in her possession. The media circus exploded outside the building, reporters camping on the sidewalk as Rose continued her normal cleaning duties, refusing to give interviews or acknowledge the cameras that followed her every move inside the building. A different kind of chaos unfolded as Sterling desperately tried to maintain control. Executives who had once ignored Rose now scurried away when they saw her coming, their faces pale with the realization that she had been watching them all along. Private investigators hired by Sterling dug into Rose's past, looking for anything to discredit her, but found only more ammunition for her case. Bank records showing her careful investment strategy, transcripts proving her academic excellence, and most damaging, interviews with other cleaning staff who had witnessed Sterling's late-night destruction of evidence. Each attempt to undermine her only revealed new layers of her meticulous preparation. Sterling made a fatal mistake when he tried to paint Rose as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge for years of low wages. She calmly produced performance reviews showing her excellent work record, pay stubs demonstrating how she had never once complained about her salary, and security footage of her working diligently. While executives mocked her presence in late-night meetings, her dignity under pressure made Sterling's attacks seem desperate and cruel. The turning point came when 3 junior executives approached Rose's lawyer seeking immunity deals. They had witnessed Sterling's crimes but had been too afraid to speak up until they saw the strength of Rose's evidence. Their testimony corroborated every detail of her investigation, adding new layers of proof that made Sterling's position increasingly untenable. The house of cards he had built began to collapse as more whistleblowers emerged, each one seeking to save themselves. Rose watched from her familiar position behind the cleaning cart as Sterling's allies abandoned him one by one, corporate politics shifting like sand beneath his feet. Her years of observation had taught her that power was fleeting, but truth properly documented was immortal. Even the board members who had initially dismissed her claims now sought private meetings, offering their support in exchange for assurances that their own negligence would be overlooked. In a desperate counter move, Sterling attempted to call an emergency shareholder meeting to have Rose removed from the company premises, that her ownership stake, combined with the support she had gathered from institutional investors, blocked his motion. The look on his face when he realized a cleaning lady had outmaneuvered him in corporate governance would be talked about in business schools for years to come. As the 5th day of battle drew to a close, Rose methodically mopped the boardroom floor, where hours earlier Sterling's lawyers had attempted their final stand. She reflected on how the room had changed in the past week, from a symbol of untouchable corporate power to the scene of its greatest vulnerability. The security cameras that had once been used to monitor her now provided evidence of years of corporate corruption, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon was simply being underestimated. As forensic accountants swarmed tech giants' offices, Rose's evidence triggered a domino effect of confessions. Junior executives started talking, competing to save themselves. Sterling's carefully constructed empire began crumbling as Rose watched from her familiar spot behind her cleaning cart, observing the chaos she had unleashed with the patience of someone who had waited 15 years to serve justice. The pristine corporate offices transformed into a scene of controlled chaos as teams of auditors combed through every file, every transaction, every decision made in the past decade. The world's top forensic accounting firm occupied the entire 14th floor, their presence sending shockwaves through the building. Rose had given them a roadmap, but what they discovered went beyond even her careful investigation. Entire departments had been created solely to hide illegal transactions. Charitable foundations existed only on paper, and offshore accounts multiplied like bacteria in a petri dish. Executives who had once strutted through hallways now huddled in conference rooms with their personal attorneys. The sound of shredders had been replaced by the hum of document scanners. Marcus Sterling's former assistant broke first. Unable to bear the weight of guilt, she approached the investigators with a personal diary detailing 7 years of watching her boss orchestrate the massive fraud scheme. Her testimony opened new avenues of investigation, revealing hidden accounts in countries Rose hadn't even known existed. Like a row of dominoes, other assistants followed suit, their collective knowledge filling in gaps that even Rose's meticulous research hadn't uncovered. The investigation spread through tech giant, like a virus, moving from floor to floor, department to department. As each revelation led to new discoveries, Rose's evidence had only scratched the surface of the corruption. The forensic teams uncovered a network of bribery extending into government contracts, money laundering operations disguised as technology investments, and offshore tax havens masquerading as research facilities. The scale of fraud made headlines worldwide as financial journalists struggled to explain the complexity of the schemes. Rose continued her cleaning duties, walking past offices where investigators huddled over computers and documents, her mop and bucket now moving through rooms filled with federal agents and corporate investigators. Some of them did double takes when they learned she was the whistleblower who had cracked the case wide open, but Rose simply nodded and continued her work, knowing that her greatest strength had always been her ability to become invisible even in plain sight. The chief forensic accountant, a woman with 30 years of experience investigating corporate fraud, called Rose into a conference room one evening to express her amazement at the precision of the initial evidence. Rose had gathered. The woman admitted that in her entire career, she had never seen such a thoroughly documented case assembled by a single person. The meeting ended with a job offer that made Rose smile as she declined, explaining she still had unfinished business at tech giant. Former board members who had rubber-stamped Sterling's decisions for years now faced their own reckonings as the investigation revealed their willful blindness to obvious fraud signals. Rose watched them leaving the building escorted by security, their faces ashen as they realized their careers and reputations were forever tarnished by their association with the scandal. She had uncovered. Some tried to claim ignorance, but Rose's evidence showed years of warnings ignored and questions deliberately left unasked. The investigation reached a crescendo when the forensic team discovered a hidden server containing encrypted emails between Sterling and his conspirators, emails that proved beyond any doubt the intentional nature of the fraud scheme. Rose had suspected its existence from snippets of conversation overheard during her night shifts, but even she was shocked by the casual arrogance displayed in the messages as executives joked about stealing from their own company, while the cleaning staff worked for minimum wage. As the 6th week of investigation concluded, Rose stood at her usual spot by the window on the 60th floor, watching the sunset over Manhattan. The office behind her hummed with activity as teams of investigators continued to unravel the complex web of financial crimes. She had exposed. Her reflection in the glass showed not just a cleaning lady, but a warrior who had brought truth to light using nothing but patience, determination, and the power of being underestimated. The emergency shareholder meeting felt like a scene from Shakespeare's Sterling, the king who thought himself untouchable faced his downfall at the hands of the cleaning lady he had walked past 1,000 times without a glance. Rose stood unwavering as she called for the vote, her years of quietly buying company stock culminating in this moment of poetic justice. As security cleared out the CEO's office, she allowed herself a small smile while mopping the floor one last time. The grand conference room on the top floor of Tech Giant Tower had never been so packed, with shareholders flying in from around the world to witness what the Wall Street Journal was already calling the most dramatic corporate takedown in modern history. Sterling arrived wearing his usual $1,000 suit, but the confident swagger was gone, replaced by the haunted look of a man watching his empire crumble in real time. He tried one last desperate speech about his vision for the company, his years of leadership, his sacrifices, but his words rang hollow against the mountain of evidence projected on the screen behind him. Every chart, every graph, every damning piece of documentation, carefully collected by the woman he had never once greeted in 15 years. Institutional investors who controlled massive blocks of shares sat in stony silence as Rose presented the final tally of losses, her voice steady as she outlined how Sterling's fraud had cost shareholders billions in actual and potential earnings. The pension fund's representatives looked particularly grim as she demonstrated how employee retirement accounts had been shortchanged to fund Sterling's lavish lifestyle. The very people who cleaned his office had been robbed of their future security by the man who never saw them as worthy of notice. The vote, when it came, was not even close. Rose had spent weeks meeting with major shareholders, walking them through her evidence, answering their questions, and laying out her vision for corporate reform, her Harvard Business School training shining through as she presented detailed plans for restructuring and accountability. Several board members who had initially dismissed her now nodded along as she spoke, some even taking notes as she outlined new compliance procedures that would prevent future fraud. Sterling watched in disbelief as his remaining allies abandoned him one by one. Shareholders he had golfed with, dined with, convinced to invest, all raised their hands in favor of his immediate removal. The same hands that had once shaken his in congratulation now signed his professional death warrant. Rose observed it all from her position at the podium, the years of dismissal and disrespect transforming into a moment of supreme vindication. Security guards, the same ones who had once barely nodded to Rose as she cleaned, now stood ready to escort Sterling from the building. He tried one last time to assert his authority, but his key card had already been deactivated, his passwords changed, his access revoked. Rose watched as he was forced to pack his personal belongings into a cardboard box, the same kind of box she had emptied thousands of times during her night shifts. The irony was not lost on anyone present. As Sterling was led toward the elevator, Rose continued her presentation, outlining immediate steps to protect company assets and restore investor confidence. Her transition from cleaning lady to corporate leader, seamless and natural, decades of observation and education combining to create someone uniquely qualified to understand every level of the company from the ground up. Shareholders who had arrived skeptical now leaned forward in their seats as she demonstrated a grasp of corporate strategy that put their most expensive consultants to shame. The final moment of the day came as Rose stood in Sterling's former office, watching his figure disappear into a waiting car 60 floors below. The same cleaning cart that had hidden her evidence-gathering equipment stood beside her, a symbol of patience, perseverance, and the power of being underestimated. She picked up her mop, more for ceremony than necessity now, and cleaned the office one final time, erasing the last traces of a corrupt regime and preparing the space for a new era of corporate accountability and ethical leadership. Outside, the media crews continued their endless coverage of the scandal, but inside tech giant Tower, a quiet transformation was already beginning as Rose methodically cleaned the office she had helped expose years of corruption with nothing but determination, education, and the invisibility granted to those society overlooks. Her mop moved across the floor in familiar patterns as she reflected on how the very job that Sterling had seen as beneath him had given her the perfect vantage point to bring about his downfall. International media descended on tech giant like vultures, but found themselves shocked by Rose continuing to clean offices at night. Despite becoming a corporate legend, Forbes magazine shadowed her as she explained complex financial fraud, while waxing floors. Fortune 500 CEOs started checking their own cleaning staff's credentials as the whispers started. The moment Rose Martinez stepped into tech giant's executive floor, her sensible shoes squeaking against marble that until 2 days ago she had polished herself. The board's decision to promote their head of maintenance to chief ethics officer had already made headlines, but few understood the full weight of what was coming. Rose had spent 15 years working night shifts at tech giant, mopping floors and emptying trash bins, while pursuing her degree in ethical leadership at Harvard's night school program. She had witnessed firsthand how the corporate world's invisible workforce kept its gleaming machines running, how the dreams of janitors, security guards, and maintenance staff were swept aside with the day's debris. Her first board meeting was supposed to be a mere formality. Traditionally, new executives spent their first month learning the ropes. Instead, Rose walked in with a comprehensive proposal that would reshape corporate America's relationship with its essential workers. The Night Shift Scholars Program wasn't just about education. It was a declaration that dignity had no hierarchy. The program was breathtaking in its scope: full university scholarships for all maintenance staff, their children, and their spouses, flexible scheduling to accommodate classes, mentorship programs, pairing executives with maintenance workers who shared their academic interests. The annual budget for the program equaled a mere 2% of the company's marketing spend, but its impact would ripple through generations. In the lobby of tech giant's headquarters, where modern art pieces worth millions once hung, Rose's cleaning cart now stood in a glass case. Beside it, her Harvard diploma gleamed under careful lighting, but it was the third item in the display that drew the most attention: a simple notebook, its pages worn and coffee-stained, containing 15 years of observations and ideas written during break times between cleaning shifts. The notebook opened to a page dated 12 years ago, containing a rough sketch of what would become the Night Shift Scholars Program. The corporate world had expected Rose to adapt to their culture. Instead, she had transformed it. When asked by Forbes about her unconventional journey, Rose simply smiled and said, "Leadership isn't about where you started, it's about remembering who you are when you arrive." Within 6 months, 17 Fortune 500 companies had launched similar initiatives. Rose's cleaning cart had become more than a symbol; it was a revolution in glass case, reminding everyone who passed through those doors that true corporate ethics weren't about polished mission statements. They were about seeing the dignity in every uniform and ensuring that no dream got lost in the night shift. Rose became the symbol of corporate America's hidden watchdogs.